Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's Unpacking video. We are so thankful that you took time out of your week to sit down and watch. If you haven't already, we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to leave us a like and a comment as well. With that, let's go ahead and get into this week's Unpacking video. Good afternoon, everybody. We are sitting down today to discuss this weekend's message and unpack it. We didn't get a chance to sit down with Richard because we had a jam-packed weekend.
We did, yeah.
We went from church to setting up for a Passover Seder to eating a heavy lunch, or at least I did.
You did.
And then we went back to church and had our Passover Seder. So we didn't get a chance or an opportunity to sit down and do an unpacking video with Richard, unfortunately. But you have the next best thing.
I don't know about that.
I'd say so.
Gosh.
So let's go ahead and jump into Richard's message.
Yeah.
You and I, we were talking about it, and it felt like Richard's message, you gave the analogy that it felt like somebody took one of those hand mixers
Yeah.
and just took like your skull cap off and
Just running around in there real good.
Yeah, which I agree in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't that it was disorganized or anything. It was that there was so much substance to draw from it. There was so much information that Richard had, so many scriptures, so many, just everything.
Yeah. I had somebody on Sunday night at the Seder ask me, okay, so I was writing down the scriptures and I got a lot of them, but I couldn't keep up. And I was the same way at one point. I was like, I can't even. So I just had to realize, you know what? And this is what I told him. I said, it's on our YouTube channel, and then you can go back and watch it on Facebook, because he literally went from Genesis to Revelation.
Yeah.
But the thing that I'm always intrigued with Richard's ministry is Richard comes from a Jewish upbringing. So he brings the depth, but also the simplicity of the Jewish culture, the Jewish heritage with him. And that's what's so amazing to me, is he says these things that are total bombs. He just drops these one-line things that are so deep, so profound, but it's just so simple.
Yeah.
But you could literally meditate on that for a week and still not get all the good out of it. Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. He does that every time that he comes.
Yes. I remember from being a little kid, whenever Richard would come and going to dinner with him, he would say stuff and you just like,
what?
Huh? But Richard truly is a gem for our church. I know that every time that he comes to minister, I get super excited because I know that his message is going to be timely and it's going to be something that we get to sit on and marinate in for a really long time afterwards.
Yeah. I admire, well, just in all honesty, I envy people who can speak such wisdom with such eloquence in few words. I am not a few word person.
Oh, we know.
I am not a few word person. So anyway, I envy that in the most beautiful way.
Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah.
So what I thought was really cool with Richard's message, I don't know if we really communicated with him about this radical series that we're in. But he went back and he was watching some of the messages, or at least that's what I gathered that he did. And he was talking about how his message tied in with this radical idea.
God's cool.
And yeah, really cool because we didn't really communicate that with him as far as I know.
Yeah.
And whenever he got into it, I came in a little bit late, but I sat down in time for this part. But he was talking and he said that his message, after going back and listening to Dad's and to Nick's messages, that he felt like God was ministering about the radical commission. And with this idea of a radical commission, it encompasses the Great Commission that God gave to us. And the Great Commission being, I think it's in Matthew. Is that right? Okay, I got my gospel straight. There's two M's. It's confusing. But the Great Commission is in Matthew, where he is getting ready to ascend into heaven, correct? Mm-hmm. And before he ascends, he tells his disciples, go forth into the earth and minister and baptize and save people for the kingdom of heaven, in my name, basically. And when Jesus says that, one thing that you and I were talking about, one thing that Richard had said, that as Jesus was saying that, there's 3 steps that come with the Great Commission. Mm-hmm. There's hearing, there's obedience, and then there's doing. So there's 3 things that have to take place in order for the Great Commission to be carried out.
Yeah.
So the first one is hearing. And that is as simple as seeing what Jesus said, what he commanded his disciples to do, and realizing I am a disciple. I am part of that Great Commission that was saved, that was told, or that somebody told and listened to the Great Commission before I was saved or before we were saved, that came to me and said, this is Jesus.
Shared the gospel.
Shared the gospel with you.
Yeah.
And saved you for the kingdom.
Yeah.
Because of that, someone heard that and was obedient and went and did what Jesus commanded us to do. So in turn, we are now a part of that command as well. Mm-hmm. We are a part of that Great Commission that is sent to go out and do. Mm-hmm. It's sent out to be obedient to what God asked us to do.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. Just the tie-in that he had, that radical, because that is a radical thing to hear and to say, okay, this is my call to ministry. Because he doesn't say, if you're a pastor, go do this. If if you work for a church, go do this. He just says, go and do. He doesn't give stipulations. He just says, go and do.
Yeah. I think that hearing part is so important, because I don't know if anybody else does this, but I'll hear something and I may have heard that before, but then I will hear it at just the right time and it lands different for me. It hits in a way that the meaning of it has gravity. And I think that when Richard was talking about hearing, he was talking about that moment where you hear the gospel of Jesus in such a way that it lands with gravity, that it doesn't go here, but it comes here. And it's not just the hearing with the ears, but I think there's a sense of hearing with the heart. It goes beyond just the hearing, tickling of the ears. Yeah. But it lands deeper. And when that lands deeper, then that's where it then has a provocation of obedience with it. That when it hits with gravity, there is a equal obedience that comes to the depth that we hear. There is a depth of obedience that comes with that, and it flows. The obedience is not a legalistic obedience. It's not an obey or else. It's an obey because. Obey because you are loved. Obey because of the gravity of the good news of what you just heard. Now there is an equal response of obedience to that hearing. Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking as you were saying that gravity or that weight of hearing that and carrying that out. Hold on, someone's calling me. It's my wife. I'm not annoyed at all.
Wait, go ahead and answer her.
Hey, hon. Don't say any bad words. We're recording for Unpacking right now.
I'm so sorry.
But you're his wife and you come first.
Yeah, but I'm sorry if you were in the middle of recording and I messed it all up.
It's okay. We're still recording. You're probably going to be on the video this week.
Okay, bye.
Bye. I'll call you back in a bit. So, anyways, as I was saying, I don't know if I'll keep that in. As you were saying that, what started rolling through my mind was the command that Jesus gives us, we obey because we love him. And I started thinking about, as a kid,
Well, the scripture says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments.
Yeah.
So the keeping of the commandments is out of love,
yeah,
not out of fear and not out of legalism.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So what I was thinking about was, as a kid, like whenever I was little, if you and Dad told me, go clean your room, it was my job to go clean my room. And whenever I was younger, it was out of an obligation to, or else you're going to get your butt whooped. But that taught me from a young age of, you should be obedient, not just out of obligation, but because you love your parents, And now, at 25 years old, when you ask me to do something, I mean, I am a grown man. Like, there's not, you can't make me do anything.
You are a grown man who is 6 something and larger than I am, stronger than I am. No. And that's the point, is I knew when you were a boy, there's going to come a day when you were still in my home and still under my care, that I would not be able to physically force you to do anything. Which happened.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly, junior high into high school, that happened. So I knew, Dad and I knew, that there has to be an honor established, because I will not be able to physically force you to do anything at some point. It's going to have to be your will to do that.
Yeah. And that comes with there being a love that is established. Like, if you and Dad were jerks, like terrible parents, just turds all the time, and you told me, like, now we need you to come watch the house, I'd probably be like, hey, kick rocks, find somebody else to watch your dog,
Yeah.
But you taught me value and honor and respect and love, and from that, now you guys can ask me to do just about anything and I do it,
Yeah.
And it's not from a place of obligation. It's from a place of, I love you, so I'm going to.
Well,
And that's what Jesus did for us. He showed us. Jesus didn't have to go to the cross. Jesus didn't have to do what he did for us.
Right.
He could have said it and it would have been done. He could have spilled one drop of blood and it would have been done. At the Seder, Dayenu, right?
Yeah,
it would have been enough.
Would have been more than enough. Yeah.
More than enough.
Yeah.
A drop of blood would have been more than enough.
Yeah.
A single word would have been more than enough. Yet he chose to go the extra mile. And he chose to go to the full extent and die for our sins, not out of obligation, but out of love.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, man, there's so much. You are saying stuff and like things are just like popping like this on the inside of me, because I think talking about parenting, which is something that a lot of people can relate to, is, like I said, there came a point, and I don't know why I thought of this, but I was thinking about, it's like having a dog that is going to get really big. You better train that dog when they're a puppy, because when they're full grown, like our golden retriever, and they're unruly, there is nothing you can do about that.
I was just going to say, like Maisie.
Like Maisie. So raising you was much like raising a puppy.
Thanks.
but that at some point, I'm not going to be able to physically control, but that's not the goal. That was not our goal as a parent, was to be able to physically control you. Our goal as a parent was to raise you in a way that you were equipped to make wise choices. Which, when you think then about Father God, his goal as our Father is not to control us, because if that were the case, he would not have put the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the middle of the garden for Adam and Eve. He put them in a place where they were given everything that they could possibly need, as a good father would do. He provided for them. He spent time with them. He was close to them, and he gave them choice. That ended up not going so well, but don't we all experience that though?
Yeah.
I think we've all made choices that we can look back on and say, yeah, that didn't go so well. But then fast forward, God knew what would happen. And he also knew that there would be a man, Abram, then, who out of his own free will would choose obedience to come into covenant with God, which would then give God, when you come into covenant, everything that I have becomes that person's, and everything that that person has becomes mine. So God, knowing then that he would find a man, Abram, who would be willing to enter into covenant with him, once again, God entering into covenant with Abram meant everything that Abram had, God now had access to. All of creation once again in the earth. Now, Abram now has access to everything that God has, like in the garden. So it was choice though. And there again, you go to then later, Abram having his name changed to Abraham, Abraham choosing to sacrifice his son Isaac, his own free will, his own choice. So Abraham choosing of his own free will to sacrifice his son Isaac, being willing to do so, now opens the door for God to send his only son as a sacrifice. So he found someone who was willing to make the choice of own free will, not out of control. So therefore he could send his son Jesus, who then had the choice, who would say, I am about my Father's business. I'm here to do my Father's work. I'm here to do what my Father sent me to do, out of not control, but out of love. For God so loved that he gave Jesus, and Jesus loved that he died on the cross for everyone then to be able to be in covenant with the Father. So...
Well, I feel like you just talking about that, what kind of got stirred up in me is that what Jesus, your phone's not on silent.
I'll turn my phone on silent right now. Okay, there we go.
What Jesus did. So if you think about what Jesus is teaching and you look at it from a perspective of parenthood, in kind of apples to oranges compared a little bit. I don't know if that's the right terminology.
We'll go with that. I like it.
I like it.
Yeah, it's good.
If you look at it in that way, what you're doing, so let me get my thoughts here because it's all in my head, but again, it's like a blender up there. What you guys taught me, it goes back to what you said about choice. That there's a choice. You're either obedient or you're not. If you're obedient, there's an outcome. If you're not obedient, there's an outcome. And it can be positive or negative in both ways. But let's just say for right here, the obedient is what God is telling you to do, what your parents are asking you to do, whatever. There's going to be a positive outcome to the obedience. If you're disobedient, there's going to be a negative outcome. As a kid, it was getting your butt whooped. Or at least that's what it was for me. You get your truck keys taken away for the weekend. You get grounded. Whatever it is, there's a punishment for not being obedient. Or there's a something that is taken away. Or a consequence of some sort. with adulthood, if you're not obedient, there's consequences. You get fired, you miss out on opportunities, whatever that is. But from a young age, you're taught that there's a choice. You're taught that there is an opportunity cost. If you're obedient, you may not get to do what you want to do. If you are obedient to cleaning your room, it comes at a cost of maybe playing video games for a little bit longer. But if you're obedient, or if you're disobedient, it comes at the cost of your hide getting tan. You know?
Yeah.
And then it carries on in the future. But what I think that teaches is servanthood. Later on down the line, it teaches servanthood. Because like you said, you had 18 years to get me to a place where my obedience was not out of obligation, it was out of love, which then turns into, I think, it turns into servanthood. When you're not doing something out of obligation, but rather you're doing it out of love and out of a place of let me do this, it turns into servanthood.
Yeah.
So then that rolls into our everyday lives where maybe our boss asks us to do something and maybe we don't love our boss, but we say, you know what, I'm serving him. So I'm going to, or her, I'm going to be obedient to my boss. This turns into, or this is big for marriage, because you made the idea, you aren't necessarily obligated to do what your spouse tells you, but you love your spouse, so therefore you're going to do it.
And you're dying to self.
You're dying to
serve
self,
them.
to serve your spouse. So that, this idea of there's a choice is taught from a young age to serve. And that's exactly what Jesus did for us, is he chose to serve us. And that's what the Great Commission is all about, is him saying, will you serve me?
Well, and like what you're saying, I hope I don't take this in another direction, but what you are saying, what I think of is from instilling, it starts at such a young age, but that servanthood, the choice often involves the choice of, am I going to do what I want to do to serve my need, to serve my want and my desire, or am I going to choose to do what the Father's asking me to do? And it may not even necessarily be what the Father's asking me to do. It could be something as simple as, am I going to choose what makes me feel good and what I want, or am I going to choose to serve the greater good? You could say it that way, you know. That's kind of a universal. But so like what I think about is, like, for example, teaching kids teaching your kids about sex and staying pure starts at 2 years old in the cereal aisle. Because if you teach that child, if I tell you no, and that child proceeds to throw a fit in the grocery store, or I tell you to sit down and be still, and you don't sit down and be still, and you proceed to throw a fit, and I give you what you want, what I've just taught you is that by you rebelling and throwing a fit, you get what you want, when you want it, and how you want it. Take that same teaching, because every time you do that with a child, you are teaching them and forming the choice in them. I throw a fit, I get what I want. You fast forward to 18 years old in a car with a boy and a girl with hormones raging, and one says no, and the other one has been raised with the choice teaching, the culture choice teaching of, if I throw a fit, I get what I want. You fast forward then into an employer. If I throw a fit, I get what I want. No, that's not going to work well for you there. You're going to get fired if you do that. You fast forward that into a marriage. If I throw a fit, I get what I want. That's not going to translate into a healthy marriage. So it's a choice that we learn, that we instill, a parent instilling into a child from the time that they're old enough to understand boundaries and to begin to establish those boundaries for them. And then the boundaries are not a legalistic boundary. A boundary is established for your safety and for your future, because this was, one of the scriptures, for I know the thoughts that I have for you, says the Lord, to give you a future and a hope of good and not of evil. Jeremiah 29:11. So if we raise our kids in that same way, then if I teach you don't touch the stove because it's hot, I'm not doing that because I'm a legalistic, religious nut parent. I do that because I know that you are going to have need of your hand in the future, and I want a good future for you. So I'm going to protect what you do to protect your hand.
Yeah.
So then later on, you then have the value of good choices, making choices that set you up for a future and a hope.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, all of this from an hour message.
Richard's message. I'm telling you, if you haven't watched Richard's message, it's you got to go watch it. It's so good.
There's so much to go off of there. Before we close this out, which I think we should be getting pretty close to needing to, you had a line that Richard said, one of his mic drop deals about sin. So why don't you read that and we'll get into that just a little bit. We don't have a whole lot of time, but we'll get into it a little bit.
So he made the statement he was established the foundation that we are free to love. And he said that in that freedom that we are to be killing sin, or sin will be killing us.
So why did you write that down? What was it about that statement that you heard and you said, I need to write this down? What was the weight of that to you, or what was the reason?
Well, as you were talking earlier, what came up to me is when God said, I set before you today life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life. It's like, okay, here's a multiple choice test, but I'm even going to give you the answer. Choose the life and choose the blessing. That's what a good father is wanting. But again, I set before you today, and he gives you a choice. He says, this choice, it will go well for you. This choice, it will not go so well for you. So in that, be killing sin, or sin will be killing you. The wages of sin is death. Ever since the garden, the wages of sin is death. When sin happens, something dies. So that could be a physical death, but it could also be the wages of sin is death. What if it is little by little, it's a death of sensitivity to God's voice? When people say, well, I don't hear God's voice, or I don't know if God talks to me, he is talking all the time here. However, if we're continually choosing to do what I want to do, what feels good to me, and what serves my purpose right now, then little by little, that hearing gets harder and harder because I'm choosing to not obey. When I hear, I choose to not obey, which therefore means I'm choosing disobedience. So the more often I choose disobedience, the more often I choose sin, the quieter and quieter God's voice has a potential to be. Not because God is pulling away from me, but because in my choice, just like in the garden, when Adam and Eve hid, I'm choosing to put distance between me and God through my choice of sin.
Yeah.
So when he said, be killing sin, or sin will be killing you, I thought it's a little by little. It's not a one day you just, get run over by a truck. That would be a very extreme situation. It is the little by little that our senses grow dull to the Father. And in those senses growing dull, that is the sin killing us.
Yeah.
It's Jesus saying, I've come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. When we are not killing sin, we're choosing what the enemy came to kill, steal, and destroy. He's killing dreams. He's destroying marriages. He's stealing peace, all of those things. But when we are killing the sin daily, choosing what may be the sacrificial choice, it will ultimately lead us to the life and life more abundant, the good that God has in store for us.
Yeah.
And the more we can choose that, even just in the little things that don't seem like the big things, it's the little foxes that spoil the vine. When we choose just the little things, it puts us in a place where God's grace, his awe, his goodness, his love becomes more and more tangible. So that's what that resented with me.
That's good.
I thought you were looking at me like, wow.
No, I think
Okay, Mom.
That's so good. I mean, it's that kill or be killed kind of thing. Is, are you going to choose to kill the sin that's so desperately trying to get you away from God, to try and dull your senses, or are you going to let that kill you, or are you going to kill it? Are you going to continue to grow closer to God in order to further your relationship with him? Are you going to grow closer to him in order to answer that call that he has on your life? I think that's another statement. Like you said, Richard just drops these little statements here and there that you can sit on and chew on and marinate in and go over and over again till Jesus comes back.
Yeah.
And you still won't get the fullness of it. That is one of those statements.
That's one of those statements.
Is either kill sin or sin will be killing you.
Yeah.
And it's simple. It's so easy to grab a hold of. What are you going to do with it?
Hear. Obey.
Do. That's so good.
Oh, the simplicity of it.
We want to say thank you once again for tuning in to this week's Unpacking video. We will be back next week with another Unpacking on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Again, if you haven't already, we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave us a like, and we encourage you to comment also. We want to know what you got from this week's Unpacking video, from the sermon that we unpacked or the topic that we unpacked. We also would love to hear if you have any ideas for us to unpack as well. So leave those in the comments section. Again, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you back here next week, Wednesday at 5 p.m.